Ichigo or Meliodas? Soul Reaper or Demon? Getsuga Tensho or Full Counter? Orange hair or yellow? Cancelled anime or bad animation? Who would come out on top if these two slightly edgy protagonists were to battle it out? I will be using my Weeaboo wisdom to analyze these two characters and try and decide how a fight between them would go. To avoid spoiling people who haven't read the manga, the versions of the characters I will be using are Ichigo during his final fight with Aizen, and Meliodas in his assault mode. There are rumors that the next season of Bleach will be coming out soon, and if that's the case, you can expect me to do a second video on this topic with more current versions. That is, if the 7 Deadly Sins doesn't get cancelled due to how atrocious the current season is. Let's start out with trying to gauge how powerful Ichigo is. Ulquiorra's Cerro Oscuras was able to shave off a large portion of the canopy of Las Noches, which is so big it would have supposedly taken 3 days just for them to walk to the gate, and they were already at the side of the large building, which means if the gate was at the furthest point possible, at the exact opposite side of where they were, it would take 6 days to walk around all of Las Noches. But to make sure I don't highball, I'll say they will use about half that walking time to rest or sleep. So let's just say we'll take 3 days of straight walking to get around the whole thing. The average walking speed is about 3 miles an hour, which would mean the circumference of Las Noches should be around 216 miles. Ulquiorra's Cerro Oscuras destroyed the roof from the center to the outer edge, so the length of the attack would be equal to the length of the radius of Las Noches, which would be a little over 34 miles. However, a later shot shows the damage is much less than that, which is a bit inconsistent, but it doesn't really matter because the same scan we see Ulquiorra's strongest attack, his Lanza del Relampago, going off in the distance, and the attack plus its shockwave is easily comparable to the radius of Las Noches. If the radius of Las Noches is really around 34 miles, that means Ulquiorra's attack radius should be about half that, so 17 miles. That would be big enough to completely wipe away large cities like New York, London, or Tokyo, and is even enough to wipe out good-sized islands. Even if you want to disregard the walking statement, Las Noches was still big enough to house a vast desert with a bunch of large buildings inside of it, and the tall pillars on top were puny in comparison to Ulquiorra's Lanza. So even visually, the attack should be at least city level. And with the walking statement, it could even be argued to be up to island level. If that wasn't impressive enough, Ulquiorra actually had the ability to use that attack repeatedly, so if he decided to start throwing those, he could wipe away multiple cities or islands. After losing control of his hollow form, Ichigo became so powerful he was able to stop Ulquiorra's Lanza with one hand and crush it into oblivion. One of his Cerros was also able to match and seemingly have the edge over one of Ulquiorra's Cerros Oscuras, creating a blast that covered a large portion of the Las Noches canopy. Ichigo then created a massive Cerro that blew off half of Ulquiorra's body and went right through to the sandy bottoms of Las Noches below. You can see how massive the attack was compared to the pillars below, ripping them up with just the force of the shockwave. And each one of those pillars has a diameter of 30 meters, which is around 100 feet. Using those pillars, we can estimate the size of the blast. Just the portion we see is about 5 times wider than the pillars, so 150 meters, or almost 500 feet. And the height is about 12 times taller than the pillars are wide, so that would be about 360 meters, or almost 1,200 feet. Then the portion on top of the roof is actually even taller, so at least 720 meters tall. And it seems like the part of the blast on the roof is quite a bit thicker as well. This puts the blast at mountain size, and that doesn't even include the potency. So considering Ichigo was able to crush the at least city-level Lanza and create a mountain-sized explosion, he's at least well within mountain level in power. And if we go by the walking statement, he would be at least island level. He can also repeatedly fire off these kinds of attacks without much trouble. During his fight with Aizen, Ichigo surpassed even this level of power, as he was so powerful that Aizen couldn't even sense his spiritual pressure anymore. And this is a version of Aizen that was even stronger than a previous version that had already become so powerful, nobody else could sense him but Ichigo. Nobody said anything about not being able to sense Ichigo after his hollow transformation against Ulquiorra, so it's very likely that version of Ichigo is even weaker than the initial Hogyoku form Aizen. And he should definitely be weaker than later versions of Aizen. As he became so powerful, weaker people would die or even disintegrate from just being in his presence. Ichigo in this form was able to catch Aizen's full power swing with his bare hand, which resulted in the ground behind him being torn to pieces. His own strike was so strong, the wind pressure from it alone completely vaporized the top of a hill. Aizen used a Kido on him that created a torrent of gravity so strong it could warp time and space, yet Ichigo just brushed it away with a single hand. He performed all of these feats while looking bored. The only attack that hurt him was Aizen's Fragger, which was visually at least mountain level, but should be higher in potency considering it hurt Ichigo at all, who was much stronger than he was when he was already at least mountain level. Aizen then used a Fragger from each of his 6 wings to create a structure surrounding Ichigo called Ultra Fragger, and Ichigo just destroyed it with a swing of his sword. That indicates Ichigo has more power than even 6 Fraggers combined, so he's at least multi-mountain level at this point, and could easily be island level. And if we go by the statements that put Lanza at island level, he could even be country level considering how much more powerful he is compared to Ulquiorra at this point. There are actually statements in the final arc of the manga that back up this kind of power, but I'm not going to go into that now. So for the sake of this video, I'll just say Ichigo during the Aizen fight is in the island level range, as Ulquiorra's attack could already be argued to be at that level. A weaker version of Ichigo could crush said attack with his bare hand, and Ichigo during the Aizen fight could swat away an attack 6 times stronger than the one that was already far stronger than Ulquiorra's. Speed-wise, Ichigo was fast enough to react and dodge Dagin's Bankai, which was stated to be 500 times faster than the speed of sound, and this speed was confirmed by the guidebook. He was also able to dodge a version of the attack that was supposedly 2 times as fast according to the guidebook. So that would mean Ichigo could react to attacks 1,000 times faster than the speed of sound in a weaker form. Ichigo was able to blitz a version of Aizen that was much faster than he was when he dodged the Mach 1000 attack, which would mean that during the Aizen fight, Ichigo should definitely be well into the 4-digit Mach range, with reaction speeds probably at least nearing the 5-digit Mach range. When it comes to the power of the Dragon Sin of Wrath Meliodas, luckily we don't have to do quite as much scaling to figure out how strong he should be, as the best feat in the series at this point is his own. When he destroyed the kingdom of Danafor, the darkness attack drilled miles into the earth, while also shooting high into the sky off-panel. In this regard, it's actually very similar to Aizen's Fragger, though I think Meliodas' attack definitely seems more powerful. Visually, it's at least multi-mountain level, as we can see it's thicker than the mountain next to it, and it's many times taller while also going many times deeper into the ground. Considering how much of the ground is actually vaporized, and assuming the part that went into the sky could vaporize just as much, I could see a good argument for the attack actually being island level, especially when you look at how big the hole looks in some scans. However, in others it doesn't look quite as big, so I'll put Assault Mode Meliodas' power at high-end multi-mountain level to small island level. Some of you might be thinking, but Meliodas did that in a weaker form. Shouldn't his Assault Mode be even stronger? When Meliodas destroyed Danafor, it was in a fit of rage where he most likely released all of his power, and later in the manga it's actually confirmed Meliodas had access to his Assault Mode at this point, so the power he used to destroy Danafor should include his Assault Mode. Meliodas has high-level regeneration and can put his body back together even after being cut into pieces, as long as all 7 of his hearts don't get destroyed. Meliodas technically has a curse of immortality,
but only I can live forever.
But I'll be excluding that for this battle, and Ichigo could arguably override it since Soul Reapers destroy souls. When you think about it, most of Ichigo's opponents are already dead anyways. Meliodas' signature move is Full Counter, which reflects magic attacks back at multiple times their original power, and with his Sacred Treasure Lost Vein, he can split his power among clone bodies. When it comes to speed, Assault Mode Meliodas should at least be in the upper triple-digit to lower 4-digit Mach range. If you want to see my reasoning behind this, I recommend you watch my How Strong is the One Escanor video, as I go through his speed and other stats there. And a lot of the stuff I mentioned in that video applies to Assault Mode Meliodas. So how would a fight between these two go down? When it comes to raw stats, I believe Ichigo carries the advantage. He was able to brush away an attack that was already 6 times more powerful than an attack that was already somewhat comparable to Meliodas' Meltdown attack. And even though Meliodas' Meltdown attack is bigger, it was basically him releasing all of his power, while Aizen's attack was just a casual one. Plus, the potency of Aizen's attack should actually be more than just what the damage shows. And while Meliodas' attack might be too, there isn't as much evidence to back it up.
Evidence is also the reason why I give Ichigo the speed advantage, as we are certain his speed should be over Mach 1000 due to the numbers given to us. And while Assault Mode Meliodas probably is as well, we can't really be 100% sure. I do think there's a good argument for Meliodas being physically stronger, though. In the beginning of the series, before he even got his full power back, he was able to slice a hill in half with just the shockwave of swinging a twig, and him and Ban arm wrestling destroyed a large castle that was fortified with a magical barrier. Critical over Gallon was able to slice apart hills in the distance with the shockwave of his swing, which is arguably comparable to Ichigo's feat of disintegrating the top of a hill with the gust of his swing. And Assault Mode Meliodas is far stronger than Gallon. That being said, that was Gallon's full power swing, while Ichigo's swing was just casual. So I do think Ichigo's quite a bit stronger than Gallon. But Escanor was able to tank Gallon's attack with nothing but a small scratch, and Assault Mode Meliodas was able to stab a hole through him, and hold Estarossa and Zeldris both down at the same time. And each one of them was comparable in power to Escanor at the time he tanked Gallon's attack. However, even if Meliodas is a bit stronger, Ichigo can increase his attack power even further with Getsuga Tensho. Now the question is, would full counter actually work on it since it's not technically a magical attack? That's not a question I can really answer, but I think if it could, that would give Meliodas a big advantage. Another advantage for Meliodas is his regeneration. Ichigo may slice him up with his sword, but his demonic regeneration is a perfect counter to that. As long as Ichigo doesn't know to target Meliodas' 7 hearts, he will have an extremely hard time putting him down. Speaking of damaging Meliodas, even though full counter might not work, revenge counter should, as that just takes the damage he received and turns that power back on his opponent. This is the perfect power to allow Meliodas to take down an opponent stronger than himself. Ichigo has a trump card as well, his final Getsuga Tensho, which takes all of his power and puts it in one move. This attack should cut through Meliodas like butter, but the problem with it is, once Ichigo uses it, he loses all of his Soul Reaper powers. So if he doesn't finish off his opponent with it, he's doomed. This is especially bad for him in this case, as with Meliodas' 7 hearts and regeneration, Meliodas would most likely survive the attack, so if Ichigo decides to use this move, he would most definitely lose unless it also happened to destroy whatever hearts Meliodas had left. So for these reasons, I think if these two didn't have knowledge on each other, Meliodas would win. Ichigo would probably start out with the advantage, but Meliodas would keep regenerating, and eventually he would release a revenge counter, which would either outright defeat Ichigo, or heavily damage him to the point where he would probably use final Getsuga Tensho, which will most likely fail, and leave Ichigo completely vulnerable. Don't forget this has happened before, as Ichigo would have actually lost to Aizen, even though Aizen was weaker than him, due to his immortality. And Aizen only lost due to Kisuke's sealing Kido. However, if both Ichigo and Meliodas had knowledge of each other's abilities, I would side with Ichigo, as he would use his greater speed and attack power to chip away at Meliodas' hearts until they're all gone. So in the end, I think Ichigo has the ability to beat Meliodas, but without proper knowledge, I think Meliodas would come out on top more often than not. Well, that's my opinion on how I think this fight would go down. If you liked the video, I would appreciate you hitting the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more content like this, I recommend subscribing, as I'm planning on doing another Bleach vs 7 Deadly Sins video in the near future. If you want to ask me any questions or discuss something with me, I encourage you to leave a comment. And if you disagree with some of the things I have said, I'll be happy to listen, and maybe I'll even find your disagreements reasonable. But if I don't, I'll hit you with a full counter!